Uh, Digital India is arguably one of the most important initiatives to have been launched by this government. And I'm delighted to be here today with all of you and share some thoughts and listen to some of the thoughts and perspectives on Digital India. Some of you may be aware that there was a study conducted by the McKinsey Global Institute which brought out the potential impact of disruptive technologies on India. And even to me, as a person who has been associated with this sector for many years, some of the projections were quite astonishing. The big projection was that the application of these disruptive technologies in India could create an acceleration of the economy and could actually contribute as much as $500 billion to $1 trillion a year annually to the Indian economy by 2025. That was the power and potency of disruptive technologies in a country at India's stage of development. And the Digital India initiative, or the Digital India dream, whatever you want to call it, is all about putting these disruptive technologies to work for the economic development and well-being of the country. And we already had a taste of it, so people don't think of this as a pipe dream anymore, because we have seen in 10 years what the mobile explosion in the country has done and how it has changed everybody's life. So clearly this is something which is important, but it's equally clear, not only from this report, but from many other studies, and I'm sure from the experience of all of you and all of us who have actually worked in this area, that there's nothing automatic about it. And therefore it's important how it is done and what is the manner in which the implementation ought to be made, because there is a right way and a wrong way, and several ways in between. And whether you actually get this multiplier or not does depend on how you implement. So mere application of the technology is not going to get us that $500 billion or $1 trillion. The second thing is, since this event is more focused on the digital gov part of Digital India, it's also important to have a sense of proportion or perspective. And that proportion or perspective is that Digital India is a much larger concept. It envelops the whole nation. Digital Gov is a little bit smaller, where it is largely related to the interface with the government or the government's inner workings itself. And in terms of a sense of proportion, I think Digital Gov is only about 25% of Digital India. A large part of it lies outside the government itself. But let's look at the government piece a little more closely. It's not as if digital government or e-governance, or by whatever name you want to call it, is something which is new. It's been around for a long time. It was around a long time before even the NEGP was introduced or approved in 2006. So it's been more than a decade actually since there has been a concerted effort to implement it. What are the real learnings that we have from all these 10 years, and how do we apply some of those learnings to what lies ahead in terms of digital gov? If you look at what has happened since 2006, not only in terms of what are the lessons which are learned, but also some of the changes which have happened, because India in 2015 is very different from India in 2006. And so let's look at some of the some of the learnings, some of the successes, some of the failures, and some of the changes which have happened. First and foremost, if you look very objectively at a lot of the e-governance projects which have been implemented, the fact is that there have been a few successes, a few failures as well, but many of them have neither been complete successes nor been complete failures, and somewhere in between. But this is all very, very subjective, and people have formed their impression based on 2 or 3 projects which they have seen, and then generalize without having any clear idea whether this generalization is actually valid, and if it is not valid, to what extent and why it is not valid. So what we do lack is a sufficiently researched study on what has worked well, what has not worked well, which are the pieces which are falling in place and which are the pieces which are not. So I believe that that needs to be put on the table in order to draw the right inferences from all of these successes and failures. And I'll come to a few more examples of that. But meanwhile, let me also go to some of the changes which have happened since in the last decade or so, since the NEGP was first introduced. The big change is, of course, the advent of digital technologies, not just mobile, but also the social media, the analytics and the cloud, and a hugely stepped up quantum increase in terms of the interactivity that has now come up in society or even in governance as compared to what it was a decade ago. The mobile revolution has swept the country, but in addition, 2 or 3 things have now been clubbed into that, and the JAM program of the government, which is the Jan Dhan Yojana and the Aadhaar program, in combination with mobility, have in a sense created a powerful platform which lends itself to several different uses. Of course, it can be argued that the platform itself needs to be perfected, and that is certainly true, but a reasonable foundation, I would say, has been built to take us to the next level. Another big change which has happened in the decade and which has to form part of the matrix in deciding the strategy going forward is that the younger generation in society now has become a dominant force in terms of use of these technologies, in terms of use of not just smartphones but social media, and the whole nature of interaction is being driven by them, whether it is in retail or whether it is in terms of interacting with institutions of power or in affecting politics itself. And today, social media, for example, is quite central to political management of any party, any major party. So the demographic profile is having a profound implication on how these technologies are impacting the ecosystem. The second important change is that we were, of course, already a reasonable force in IT in 2006, but today India is an even more powerful force in IT globally. We have a more than 50-55% share in terms of the global outsourcing business, IT outsourcing business. But much more significant than the simple growth in size over the last 10 years is the fact that today a brand new segment of the industry has come up which has a very major implication for the digital government and more so for the digital India dream that we have. And this segment is the whole innovation and startup ecosystem, which today is drawing some of the best and brightest minds of the country. And I think that is the probably the single most important development, because no longer do the brightest minds look for which is the best paid job that they can get in some big corporation or in the government in some of the higher echelons, or even simply looking for, some of the best research institutions across the world and then leave the shores for going to the best institutions. Today, the best minds, many of them, are attracted to the idea of making an impact here, making an impact on a massive scale, and doing it not only across the country but across the world. That change in the mindset also is a very important driver, because that is what is the force needed to drive digital India. There is one more trend which I wanted to share with you by way of a backdrop, because this has a huge bearing on the digital India and the digital gov dream, and that is that increasingly today the IT industry the world over is being asked not just to deliver IT systems or to deliver software or things like that, but today they are being asked, how will you help us to deliver business value? How will you help us? I'm now talking from the perspective of the client companies. How will you help us to increase the sales? How will you help us to increase the responsiveness by reducing the response time to service requests? How will you help us to engage with the customers? How will you help us to use multiple channels to engage with the customers? So more of the work of the companies is being specified in terms of an outcome and not in terms of the technology. The implication of this is that you are not dealing with the CIOs of companies, you are actually dealing with the business heads. Now, if you think about that in the context of e-governance, that means you are not talking about IT or to the CIO or to the IT guy there. You are actually talking to the heads of that particular wing of the government and what they are seeking to do, and have to come up with answers on how technology will help to achieve that. Now, one other aspect is that many people think of the IT industry as, well, the IT industry. But what is often forgotten or lost in that definition is the fact that this industry today has a very strong BPM component, a business process management component, which actually manages processes for companies across the world, manages processes even for governments across the world. And one of the strongest capabilities that exists in industry today is process capability. How do you really redefine the processes to maximally make use of the power of technology? And that has been a missing piece, as all of us know, in government. But industry capability in that area has not been exploited sufficiently. Yet another learning in many of these projects has been that the absence of a very clear mission leader has been a big issue. And it's not just having a figurehead mission leader. Part-time has not worked, but even full-time, if you just have a person who is designated as a mission leader but without having the requisite skills, then that has not been a very successful story either. More recently, I believe that an effort was made in the government to induct mission leaders for different mission mode projects and open the doors to that selection to people from the industry as well. But I am told that unfortunately this has not come to pass, and therefore to a certain extent the status quo remains. That is a pity because in the absence of that, I think projects are destined to meander their way through the system. There also, I think, I missed hearing Aruna's presentation earlier, and I'm sure she would have talked about the NOFN and a lot of other stuff that the USO fund is doing. But there are a lot of learnings from that project, from the pilot, and that is that connectivity is only one part of the story. And unless that whole ecosystem of applications and services is done alongside and in parallel, this infrastructure is going to turn out to be a humongous waste of money unless these are carried out in parallel. So this idea of implementing them sequentially, infrastructure first and then later we will build the ecosystem, does need to be relooked at a little more carefully. Now, the other big negative that has been learnt and which we need to fix, because clearly we have great strengths in terms of the capacities that exist within the country, both in the government and outside. And therefore, it's important that in many cases where industry has been involved, they have run into problems. That's the reality. In spite of the fact that e-governance conferences are well attended and well supported by industry, there is a huge amount of concern in the industry about projects which have been executed, services being delivered, but payments not being made. This runs into thousands of crores today and has led to a situation where industry is holding back. I do not believe that Digital India dreams or Digital Gov dreams can be achieved in India without extensive and very energetic participation by the industry. And certainly in this backdrop, it would be difficult. The second is that even in new projects, there have been huge problems in the RFP process itself, which have prevented good response to these RFPs. And we've seen that even today we see that in a lot of projects. And a model RFP which has been prepared in consultation with the industry and has been notified by the DIT is still not as widely adopted as one might have liked it to be. But while at the heart of it, a lot of these PPP models are inherently very attractive in India, the reality is that a lot of these PPP projects have floundered because the mindset or the necessary orientation and the partnership relationship has not really got established. It's still a vendor relationship, and therefore, unless these issues are addressed, the participation of industry becomes difficult. So these are some of the learnings and some of the changes which have taken place. So what do we do based on that, and how do we adopt course corrections as we go to Digital Gov, and what can we do differently? So for one thing, if you pick up the cues from what's happening across the world and what's happening in the industry, much more of the e-governance has to move towards specifying the goals of the project in terms of the outcomes rather than in terms of what kind of IT you want to accomplish or what kind of technologies you want to use. This was referred to also by Lavnish in a slightly different context, but perhaps with the same objective in mind. So how do you specify these outcomes, and how do you specify the outcomes not in terms of technology, but with a good understanding of how technology can influence these outcomes, how you can optimize those outcomes. So you need people who understand the business of the department as well as the possibilities with technology, and then define these outcomes in such terms. The second thing is, no matter how much you improve the RFPs, the fact of the matter is that this whole procurement process within the government through an RFP is very slow and complex. And therefore, what is the scope for eliminating these by disintermediating the government, by getting the revenue flows directly to the companies, or use of open data, open APIs, which has now been tried out, or even taking in suo motu proposals, as is now being allowed by some of the more advanced state governments in terms of thinking. But a consultative approach, even where the RFPs are being put in, I think has eliminated some of these problems. Use of cloud-based solutions and looking at it from the point of view of service as a subscription model. These are different opportunities which have opened up because of technology trends. And I think therefore that all of these possibilities need to be looked at and integrated into the strategy, and to be brought out as a coherent strategy, which I think can be applied and can certainly deliver outcomes far better than what has been the case so far. So I don't want to elaborate too much onto this, but I think the need for a coherent implementation strategy which takes into account all these learnings, all the changes in the environment, all the trends in the industry, and what is possible within the governmental framework, and to what extent the heavy hand of the government in bringing in some of these changes can be minimized, are things which would have a significant impact in the implementation. And I do hope that a process of dialogue and consultation, which has taken place to a certain extent, would continue, would get extended, and would deliver the dream that all of us have for Digital India and digital government. Thank you very much.